if your brain hears an objection, never, ever, ever, ever follow that objection with a statement, and certainly not a rebuttal. Meaning, if somebody objects, never follow it with a response as a statement. It should always be followed. The alternative is always follow it with a question. Well, let's just keep it really simple. Somebody says, well, you're just trying to sell me something. If you start out and say, well, no, I'm not, or, anything like that, or, that's not how we work, you're sort of buying into the objection, like somehow that's what you're doing. You're almost acknowledging it. You're defending yourself, and it puts you in a terrible position. My feeling is I need to throw this hot potato back into the lap and back into the hands of the client. So I'm going to say, oh, what do you mean by that? Or have you ever experienced that somewhere else before? Or what causes you to say that? I want them to explain themselves. First of all, just having to explain, see, you're just trying to sell me something is sort of the verbalization of the emotional defensive reaction. That's actually why they're saying that. So I need them to kind of talk through it and get their logical brain in gear a little bit. And the truth of the matter is, when you really get into objection handling, I actually teach my people, you actually hope they say to you, you're just trying to sell me something. Because then you get to say, can you share with me where that feeling comes from? Which is an incredibly disarming thing to say. It actually conveys, your statement did not rattle me in the slightest. I'm not fazed. I'm not thrown off by it. I don't own it. And so they go, well, and it's kind of interesting. They start backpedaling right away because it really is an accusation. And now they have to sort of justify it. And now I'm hoping your agency hasn't done anything to give that accusation validity. Okay, so if you've been just product peddling and, hey, you should come in for this, or hey, you should come in for that, you should probably stop that. But if you yourself haven't done it, if you have a clean slate, then I think you can say, what causes you to say that, and they'll explain it. And I think the next thing you can say then is to validate what they're saying. And so the first thing is, and if you think about it as a process, if you think about it as and I use an acronym I call SAVER, S-A-V-E-R. So hear an objection. First thing you got to do, stop selling. Just stop. Okay. The A in SAVER is to ask a question. So that's the key thing, right? So I said, well, would you mind sharing me what causes you to say that in a very relaxed, non-defensive way? And the client says whatever they say, but now you're respecting what they say. So instead of trying to rebut it, instead of trying to combat it, you are giving it, your respect by asking them to explain it. And they explain it. And whatever they say, of course, is going to be situational. But more than anything, what you're hoping to get to is a stage where you can verify your understanding, validate what they're saying, and then educate to move on. So the V is either verify or validate. And it would be something like, so what I hear you're saying is, so if I understand you correctly, what your feeling is, and you go blah, 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 and you fill in, and you sort of almost, kind of regurgitating what they say. But what that process does, what that V in that process does, is it creates empathy, meaning they're saying in their mind, wow, this person really understands me, or cared enough to try and understand me. It really deflates a lot of the anger and the aggression that usually accompanies some of those statements. And now you've earned the right to educate. That's the E in SAVER. And so if you think about it, what a lot of people do is they go right from the objection to the educate. Here's why you're wrong. And they've skipped two really, really major steps. So now I get to paint a picture, tell a story, give an example. Frankly, my favorite one when they tell me they're just trying to sell me something is, Mr. Jones or Steve, I can promise you that you will never leave this agency with any policy that you didn't ask for, need, and want us to put in place for you. So I think it's important to know that your agenda drives this process, not ours, or something like that. And then the R is resume, right? Because you have to get back on track and resume where you were. I call that conversational GPS. You have to get back to where you were before, and kind of, you were on a detour, if you will, and now you have to sort of resume down the path and say, with that in mind, would it be okay if we proceeded to discuss fill in the blank? And so if you can avoid the product first part, if you can avoid the you should part, if you can ask powerful questions to create emotional reactions and engagement, I think you're going to get that 90 to some days 100% objection avoidance. But if you get an objection, then I think you have to have a very clear process of, number one, understanding that you heard an objection, and there's 6 or 7 categories of objections, things like no time, no need, no money, no interest, things like that. Fear of sales pressure. Understand what kind of objection you're getting, follow that process, and then I think you've earned the right to resume that conversation and saying, with that in mind, would it be okay if we continued our conversation? And just the poise that you would show someone in that conversation, following that process, it's actually pretty attractive. People see your confidence and poise and the fact that you didn't get rattled. And especially for new people, I think this is really important. It's a good skill to learn. And in poker, they always talk about poker face. My feeling is you have to have poker stomach before you have poker face, meaning you have to sort of be able to control those internal emotions of, oh my God, and panic, to be able to have that calm, external, peaceful look on your face. Kind of the duck looks calm on the surface, but the feet are paddling very fast beneath.